Welcome to Beyond Logic, the podcast that challenges the way you think, questions the status quo, and dives deep into life's biggest challenges. Here we go beyond what's seen, beyond what's obvious, and beyond mere logic. If you're ready to think deeper, challenge your perspective, and step into a greater understanding of life, this is the place for you. My name is Frank Kenny, and this is Beyond Logic. I have a co-host with me over here today, a really close friend of mine by the name of Yan Kai. What's going on, Kai?
What's going on, Frankie? Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, you'll often see Kai into the episodes, into the podcast, So it's just kind of make it more fun to some degree, but also like try to get the conversation, try to get the podcast more engaging and things like that, because sometimes just kind of hearing somebody just talk, it's kind of seem like somebody's like preaching to some degree, so I wanted this to be more of like a conversation. So that's what we're going to attempt to do today. And then we'll see how this goes. Yeah.
What a great honor because this is essentially my tryout, but you're already giving me the job. So
Oh, this is a try. Kai, if this doesn't go good, I'm going to fire you. I'm sorry.
no, I can take it.
Nah, I'm just joking, So a lot of people might be asking, like, beyond logic, why beyond logic? What is beyond logic? So beyond logic is essentially it's a podcast, right? To try to merge what is like science, philosophy, and religion and spirituality together, right? Because I truly believe that a lot of all these things commingle together. They're all essentially trying to say the same thing, but like science and religion for a long time have really been like at war with itself, right? And so I truly believe that like those are things or subjects that can coexist within like the same space, right? For the longest time in history, like they've been like essentially isolated, right? You have like religion over here and you have like science over here, but like I truly believe that like science really just like proves a lot what like the religious text says, especially like Christianity. So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about this in this podcast. Essentially, how to help people grow and looking at things from two perspectives, right? From a science perspective and from a spirituality or religious perspective, right? And so it's also a way for me to grow as well, right? So this is like a special project for myself to, okay, cool. I need to get better from, like I need to like deepen my faith with God. At the same time, I'm going to help you guys do that. At the same, I also need to essentially how do I get people that don't believe in God to essentially essentially using science to try to explain like the same thing, if that makes sense. So again, that's a lot of what we're going to talk about in this podcast. So in today's episode, I'm very excited because we're going to talk about something that a lot of people really struggle with a lot. I've struggled with a lot, and I know we've talked about a lot of the struggles that we've had within this specific topic, which is essentially identity. Identity is it's a big thing. I remember like our pastor talking about identity a lot at church, and it's a big thing. It's something I've been struggling with a lot. And so when you look at like the biblical text, and even just like society today, people struggle a lot with their identity. Wouldn't you agree?
I think excuse me. I think the core problem of many people's lives is their identity, and they
Yeah.
haven't quite figured out what that is.
Mm.
And it's also not something that you can easily just say, "Hey, I figured out my identity," because you're always growing as an individual,
Mm.
and I think that's part of that growth is figuring out what your identity really is.
No, yeah, no, I certainly agree. I certainly agree. And the thing is, like I think the biggest weapon that the enemy uses, and when I say the enemy, I mean it's like the opposition, and now the devil, and I think some of the biggest things that he uses to try to essentially conquer us, and number one is like believing that there isn't one, believing that there isn't an opposition that's trying to essentially like subdue us and not help us grow. Right, and that's like one of the biggest things that the enemy will do, right? And before I even get further into the topics, like talking about spirituality, talking about God has been something. It's something that is scary for a lot of people. For the longest time, it was very scary for me to do, right? And so now, as I go with my faith, and I stopped caring much about what the world has to say. It's like, okay, cool. I've come to an understanding of like who I am, right? I've like found my identity to some capacity, And so like, now like, I feel comfortable talking about these stuff because a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about religion, talking about God, or a lot of other subjects for that matter, right? So I just want to say that firstly. But yeah, the enemy uses like will distort or essentially warp our identity so that we can't walk in fullship of what we were created to be, because in school, when when you go like to elementary school and we go to middle school, you know, a lot of what you see like in the text in the textbooks, you know, like human beings they came from monkeys and and animals and things like that. And growing up as kids, like we believe that, you know, so we think that we come from animals, we come from monkeys and things that I think that's one of the first things that the enemy will try to do to essentially, as I mentioned, like a false identity of who we are. Like we don't come from monkeys, you know. Like imagine growing up thinking, oh, like I come from an ape, I come from a monkey, you know. And so a lot of science, what they try to do is like how human beings evolved from like monkey to what they are today. Here's the thing with fear. I think fear can be both a very good thing, like the survival mechanism of it, but I think at the same time it also cripples us, right, from doing a lot of things that that we were meant and created to do, right? We shouldn't fear all things, but I think honestly a lot of people just so many things that everybody fear. Like today, people fear going to the gym, fear starting a business, fear asking a girl out. You know, those are just like small simplistic thing, but just people allow fear to dominate their life to where it cripples them, and they're not really able to advance much and essentially do what God has created them to do. It's funny, we were actually talking about this. Fear is probably the most, I think it's the word, you mentioned this, like it's the word that is repeated or said the most in the Bible. I don't know if you know by how much, but that's...
They're just on do not fear.
Yeah, the word do not fear. Yeah, do not fear, right? Do you know by like the volume or the number of times it's said in the Bible? You said that like you knew.
I said it was a lot. I don't know the exact number.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you're asking for? The exact number?
Yeah, but it's a lot. It's quite a lot. It's quite a lot.
I think it's in the hundreds or something.
Hundreds?
Maybe? I don't know.
Okay.
There's a lot.
Yeah, but and that's the thing, because like in our, you know, like this, as we grow up, you know, we're this. Ooh, this is quite interesting. Yeah, as we grow up, I think fear is also thought upon us, right? There's like the natural instinct of, okay, you like this, just things that you should fear, because not fearing those things could put you in danger, like survival, in a survival way, right? But a lot of fear is also thought upon us. I was actually watching a video on, I think it was on Instagram. So they had like these kids, these babies, right? They laid them out on a mat, like a playground. They were playing with the toys. And dude, they put snakes. Obviously, these were trained snakes. You seen that video?
Yes.
Did I send it to you?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
this was on my own.
Yeah, and this also kind of struck up the topic. And so they put these snakes around the babies, and you see the babies, they're just looking at the things, like just not minding it, and they just continue playing with the toys. And some of the kids were curious about it, and started touching the snake and like grabbing it and whatnot. Yeah. Again, obviously this was like an experiment, and like the snakes were trained, which kind of makes me think, how do you train snakes? But anyway, I think
there's
a different
passive snakes. They're not dangerous. They don't bite.
Yeah, and like they're like non-venomous, you know.
Yeah.
But back to the point, what I'm saying, like fear is also trained. We're trained to fear, right? And so it's like if fear can be trained, it can also be untrained, right? And I think particularly me, like I'm terrified of snakes. I think like a lot of people like terrified of snakes.
I didn't know that.
Okay, you don't need to know that. But yeah, I'm terrified of snakes, right? But just kind of seeing that video kind of made me think, it's okay, if I wanted to untrain myself to not be afraid of snakes, like what would I do, right? What would be like the procedure for that? And the reason that I mentioned this is like a lot of us too that are fear of things that we want to do, right? The very fear stops us from, again, whether it's starting a business, because like we're business owners, right? For a long time too, like before I started my business, like I was afraid of it, right? And typically the things that are associated with fear is, okay, cool, I'm fear that this business is not going to work. If in this particular example, okay, this, you know, people starting a business, like my family may think of me like it's just not what my family does, because like nobody in my family at the time perhaps has started a business, right? And so there's a long list of things that essentially come together to the reason why we fear. Like just the other thing about this, so there's like, now we have fear, we're talking about fear, and then like the other thing I want to tie that is like faith, right? Also, if you have faith, then there's no reason really to fear, because like if fear is the absence of, like, because we don't know like the unknown, but like faith is believing that there is, if we're talking about like in the aspect of like God, We believe that there is a God that is going to take care of all of us, to take care of our need, et cetera, right? So like if you have faith, then you tend to not fear. Would you agree with that?
No.
Why is that?
You still fear. It's a natural response. You can't control it.
And
But it's not like you dwell in the fear. I would say there's a
and so
difference between those two.
yeah, and so here's what I mean by that. So because this used to happen to me. Like I would be scared of, okay, this is what, like when I was like I had like financial issues, right? This is like back then when I wasn't really like smart with my finances. But like I would be afraid that, and at the same time, like my faith wasn't like I wasn't like my faith in God wasn't so strong. Dude, I would always fear that like, oh, what happens tomorrow? Like I don't have the money to pay for rent. I don't have the money to, like, my business is gonna fail. Like, dude, that was a big part of what like I woke me up at night, right? But then now, like I have faith in God that whatever happens, He's gonna take care of my need. And so I don't. That's not something that I fear
You're
anymore.
not
To
in
be
the same
honest.
position you were back then.
Okay, that is true. But I'm talking about even before I got to this point. Even before I got to this point, like as I was developing, I'm like, okay, cool. Whatever happens tomorrow, it's like God is gonna take care of my need. And so like that fear was not the same thing. Even now, it's like I could still fear. Okay, cool. Like, what if I was to lose it all tomorrow? If I was to lose it all tomorrow, like, okay, God can take care of my need. It's still something that I could have feared
Yeah.
even till now, regardless of like what the circumstance and what the situation is. And I think that a lot of people, like, they make a lot of money, but dude, they still fear of losing the money, losing that, right? And so that's why I'm saying, like, just having faith. I used to be kind of like scared to talk about faith, to talk about God, as much of the world is. I truly believe that a lot of people are scared to talk about things because it's not, because it kind of it goes against the grain of where society kind of goes. Because people, like in a lot of organizations, in a lot of places, like you're not really permitted to talk about God. It's a weird thing. It's kind of like taboo to talk about the Holy Spirit, And so, like now, I don't feel that. I'm openly, freely talking about God because that's like a very big part of my life. And I think, and here's the thing that I want, because people now see me doing this, I want people to feel comfortable to be able to talk about their faith, to be able to talk about God, And so that's another big piece and another big push to why I felt very pushed to do the podcast,
What was the biggest change?
The biggest change, dude, it's like
Why before you weren't kind of open to talking about God and now you are? What's the thing that changed?
Yeah, I think in the past, dude, I just cared too much about what other people thought of me. And
What were you scared they would think of though? If you would talk about God before, what was your biggest fear?
I think, he's weird, because the typical, like, he's weird, he's not like normal, and kind of like that fear of like he doesn't fit in, because I think in the past I've tried to fit in with the culture, with the past, But as time progressed, as I started to find more about my identity and who I am, specifically in Christ, I'm like, this is something that I have to talk about because it's a big piece of me. I think sometimes people only portray to the world what they think that the world likes about them, right? And I think I was very much in that same boat, and I didn't think that people, like I didn't really know about my identity like that. I didn't really know who I was, and like I was scared to what people would think, But like that's not the case anymore, and like that's not the case anymore because again, it's just like finding more of my identity and who I am, and not really care about like what other people think. Now I'm not saying like I'm 100% like I don't care about, like it still affects me because like I'm still a human being, but like it's like less and less and less now, and that's a lot of it particularly happened by me just kind of deepening my relationship like with God, just kind of understanding Him more, and so that's that. Because like again, this podcast, a lot of it is we're going to talk about God, talk about religion, not just Christianity, but like other religion as well, So we talked about how masculinity is like, being physically like strong, almost like warriors to some degree.
One part of it.
Yeah, one part of it is being like physically strong, like warriors, to be able to protect and to defend, right? And so how do you balance being like a warrior and at the same time like a servant? Warriors, okay, I'm gonna use the word aggressive, like needs to be aggressive sometimes to be able to protect, and even like when people like wars and stuff like that, like a warrior. At the same time, like how do you balance being a servant? It's I think not like the two. It's kind of hard to put the two together, I don't know if you get what I'm saying. It's kind of hard. He's
I don't think
like
so.
no, how so? How not so?
Because warriors are serving their king, their kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
They're protecting, supposed to be at least. So I don't necessarily see it that way. I think for the reason that you have to be strong is so that you're capable of when something bad happens to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If you are, if you like you're not a, I'm not saying you're not a good person or anything, but you're not capable of truly becoming the best good version of yourself if you can't also choose to do the worst thing. If you don't have the capacity to enact violence, you're not a good person for not enacting violence. You're just harmless.
Okay.
So the choice is there. And if you have the choice to enact that power, but you choose not to because out of greater service, I think that's where those two connect.
Okay. No, I like that. I like that. I didn't really see it from that perspective. Not like that.
Yeah, but I get what you mean. Like, the idea of the warrior is the one that is constantly like, okay, you're aggressive, you're fighting, you're killing people in battle. You the sword, and shield, whatever.
And the thing with this, like warriors typically have servants, people that serve them.
I don't know.
And because it just even when you look about like in like just like in the past, like warriors, there were these aggressive people that went to war when they came
on a social hierarchy, they were higher.
Yeah, they were higher, right? And
Let's say,
there's typically people that would serve them.
The servants and the peasants. Of course,
Yeah. And so that's kind of what at least that's like the lens in which I was looking for. It's like, how do you balance that? Okay, so you're a warrior, but at the same time, like if you have servants, like how are you? And what you mentioned, like if you were like the servant part of it is like protecting, like if it's in a village or something, like protecting like the village, I guess that's another way of like serving, But no, that's interesting.
But a warrior can put down his sword.
Yeah.
And he still has the skills to help.
Yeah.
You can build houses as a warrior.
That's
you can help lift a tree that fell on someone's leg.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think the idea of, I hate repeating this because it's so overused, but it's like, being a warrior in the garden is better than being a gardener at war.
Ooh, say that again? Being a warrior in a garden is better than being a garden of war? Is that what you said?
Being a gardener at war.
Or being a gardener at war.
But essentially it's like if you have the capacity to be, protect, defend, but then you don't need to because you're in a peaceful place.
Mm-hmm.
That's better than being a person who tends to a peaceful place, but is placed into a situation where you need to act in a more aggressive way.
I like that. We're gonna shift direction here in a little bit. Money and greed. So it kind of ties back to like, okay, so masculinity. I talked about how like the money aspect of it, which money can also be a sense of like power, right? Money and greed. This is and there's like so many different directions in which we can take this, but I think for the most part, dude, just like Christianity, at least how how I see it and how I see it and what I've seen, and I think obviously the things like people see money as like a very bad thing, right? People see money as a very bad thing, but as opposed to like seeing money as a tool, right? Because like in a lot of the churches, and like just like in Christian home, they seem like, see like money is like the root to all evil, But I think there's the big misconception around that particularly, And I'm gonna share one of my favorite verses in the Bible. Just money. I think it's a huge thing because if you want to be able to prosper and to be able to help other individuals, people in the world, like it requires capital. If you want to help out like help build the kingdom of God, like it requires capital to be able to do that, right? And obviously, like you need money to be able to take care of yourself, to build yourself up and things within that scope, But I think it's just again, just people see money as a bad thing, and I see how it can be a bad thing if you like look at it the wrong way. Like if you serve money as your God, which a lot of people do that. Yeah, that's a bad thing because like you're serving, like you're letting that be like your God essentially, right? And I don't think that's the way that God intended it to be. But I think the people again just kind of misunderstand this, and so they're afraid of money. Some people are afraid to come into wealth, right? And I'm not sure if it's because the fear of like money taking over and like just letting money being like the dominant thing that they serve in their life. But I don't think that's the case though. I think it's just like that fear because again they just kind of misinterpret like the Bible and saying that because it says like money is the root of all evil, but they just kind of misinterpret that. But what is your perspective on that?
I actually don't know many people that are scared of money that would like,
Kyle, you haven't been.
If I got a bunch of money, I would be scared. Okay, maybe
maybe you haven't been in the church long enough.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Me not growing up in any church.
Yeah.
I've like my perspective back then on churches was that it was a tool designed by a lot of people to not necessarily like against the religion or so, but against the practice of it. I was very much like, oh, these people are like, these pastors are all, they're all fake. They're all extracting money from people through the.
That was your view. That's what you.
That was my view, yeah, because I saw a lot of that happening.
Which it happened. Oh yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that's very true.
And
I think and that's when that's when like they serve money. Right, as opposed to use
absolutely.
They serve money as opposed to that being a tool.
Probably one of the worst sins you could commit.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. And I can see how then people kind of misinterpret that because like somebody had like having a lot of money, then like you just mentioned like with the pastors and stuff like that. Somebody having a lot of money, then they could potentially like use that for for wrong. But anyway, continue what you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I view it very much so as the tool that it is now. But there was a time when I wanted money just for the sake of having money. And, I was brought up in a very, we weren't a poor family, but we weren't rich either. So we had to be very, my dad was very frugal. Like, he didn't spend a lot of money on things. He only spent money when he needed to. He bought most of the time, the cheapest things. Occasionally, he would buy things that are higher quality, mostly for me.
For you? Okay.
Yeah.
So you were spoiled then. Just kidding.
I didn't get everything I wanted, but I got everything I needed. So I'm blessed and grateful for that.
Oh, that's good.
But I think back then it was the idea of, okay, if I have money, I can do so many things in this life. I can go to places I want to.
Yep.
I can live the way I want to.
Yeah.
I can enjoy my life more because I have the means to do so.
Yeah.
And again, all of that view back then, a lot of it was self-serving. It was, well, why do I want the money? Oh, I want it so I can attract some women and take these women on trips to different countries and buy the fancy car. Why do fancy car to attract the woman? It's like it's all very self-serving back then.
Yeah. Do you think having a fancy car is like? Do you think it's like there's something wrong with that? Like having like the big houses and just taking like the vacation, the trip. Do you think that's like wrong? Do you think it is self-serving to be able to do that?
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If you have I think the means of acquiring it is what makes it right or wrong.
Okay.
For example, if you acquired the same car, right? Let's just say it's a Ferrari, right?
Team Ferrari. Team Lambo, actually. Let's go.
I don't even know. I honestly, when I get to that point and I'm like, I'm actually going to buy one, then I'm going to go shopping. I don't know. I have to sit in each one of them and feel it out. But I think the means of acquiring it, if you acquired your wealth through, let's say, morally questionable ways, and then you use that wealth to buy the car that you want, I think that's ethically probably wrong, because you've screwed over some people that had some real consequences. Maybe they lost their business. Maybe they lost their life savings. Maybe they trusted you and you broke that trust, and then you use that to buy a car, a material thing. Yeah, that to me feels wrong.
Okay.
But if you were somebody who acquired your wealth through, morally right ways, you built a business that provided real value, people exchanged their money willingly, and they didn't regret it afterwards, and you built this, you acquired the wealth, and then you decide that you want to spend that money on, and let's say you have another layer I would say is you have all your responsibilities taken care of. You're not buying this car at the expense of something else that you should be taking care of first, like your family, your house, your future, stuff like that. You're not over leveraging. You're not going into 200K of debt to buy this car when you only have a net worth of 150K, you know, stupid things like that. Then if you're not doing any of those things and you have enough, like if you have enough wealth and you're financially, I would say, financially it's not going to hurt you, then yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's your personal preference.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I certainly think you
Appreciate
just
the beautiful things in life.
No, absolutely. No, I certainly think just having enough money to obviously to take care of yourself, to do the things that your heart wants to do, as long as it's not like evil or just like immorally like wrong, like you said, you know. I think that like you should aim for that. Like if you want a nice car, dude, if you want a Lamborghini, dude, like I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's nothing wrong with that. God intended for us to like have all these beautiful things because He created them. Like it's everything. Like He created everything, and so like we can enjoy the things.
He created our perception of what's beautiful or not.
Yes, I mean that's also true. Yeah, that is also true. You know, but like you I don't think it's a problem to enjoy these things because, dude, I noticed for myself to be true that there was a point in my life to where like I couldn't enjoy myself because I'm like, oh, like I can't have these things because other people didn't have these things, right? And I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like we know, and I'll mention Isaac. He's a good friend of ours. I think he kind of sees it that way. I think he makes good money, but like it's hard for him to spend money and enjoy things, you know.
Well,
and we talked about that and we talked about that personally. You know, like he finds it hard to go out and buy like clothes for himself, to buy for himself, you know. And he told me personally, it's like it was just kind of like a misunderstanding of kind of like maybe how he like grew up and how he perceived it. Another example for myself, dude, and you kind of touched upon like your personal story, dude. Like I did not grow up with money at all, bro. And obviously, I think I've shared a lot with you. Just growing up like in a third world country, like we didn't have money. A lot of how we make money is like by going to the market. I would sell water. I would sell avocados. That's how I would come upon more like money to be able to buy the things that I personally wanted, which sometimes like was food, maybe like toys for myself. You know, it's like my family really had to struggle and to grind, you know. And so because I didn't have that, now when I came to a place where I had the opportunity, where I have money, it's like, dude, there's just so much that I wanted to do. Like I wanted to get all the nice things. I wanted to buy all this and that, you know. So I think a lot of it kind of also stems from like how your relationship with money, how you were raised up, you know. Particularly perhaps somebody that was raised up in money. Right, and they had already a lot of those nice things. Growing up,
it's hard to go back.
It's hard to. Not that it's hard to go back. It's like they don't feel the need to be able to obtain all these things because they've already had that. They've already experienced that.
It's a standard that they have.
Yeah. There's obviously like with people, there's gonna be like different. Like the people are gonna have different stories. But like I've seen people to where. Growing up, like they had all the things, like their family had the cars, they had the vacations, they had like all the luxury stuff, you know. And I don't know what happened to those people, but like growing up, like they don't want those things. And yes, maybe because they've already experienced it. Now they want to live a little more frugal, for whatever the reason, right? They want to live a little more frugal. And obviously, like there's nothing wrong with.
Very rare.
It is rare, but like I've definitely seen it. I've definitely seen it. You know, like I know some people like that. You know.
Yeah.
And then to what you said, like to some people now it's a standard. Like they want to continue to maintain that level.
Well, most people want their lives to.
Yeah, they'd like to increase. You know.
And then that's like, what's the lens you have in that view? What are you trying to improve over time?
We're sharing our experience, you know, and so I hope you do get some value out of this, or at least just most like an open mind perspective, different perspective, and also just like a level of awareness, right? But anyhow, we're going to close out this podcast. We'll see you guys in the next one.